Hello, everyone. So it occurred to me that it might be helpful to know some very basic music theory, such as how chords are made, how scales are made, and the sequence of notes in the guitar, what sharps and flats are, whole steps, half steps, very basic stuff, but important to know if we're going to be talking about chords, how chords are made, the formulas and notes in the chords and scales. So if you're familiar already with all of the notes along the guitar, you know the sequence of the notes, how they go, where the sharps and flats are, then you can skip this one and go right to part two, where we talk about how chords are made, specifically major and minor chords. In the third part, we talk about how scales are made. So if you need any of that information, if you don't know those things, then you can go to the part that you're not familiar with. Otherwise, if you don't know the notes on the guitar neck, the sequence of the notes, and how we make the scales from those notes, then you might want to stay with this and watch this video. So let's get right into it. Now, if you look down here, we're just going to go over briefly what whole steps and half steps are. So very simply, when we say a half step, we're talking about from one fret, putting your finger on the first fret to putting your finger on the second fret. That's a half step. If you put your finger from the first fret to the third fret, that's a whole step because there's two frets, right? You're putting your finger from here to one, two, right? You're moving up two frets, or you're moving up one fret is a half a step. Now, you might also hear people use the words tone and semitone. A semitone is a half step, and a tone is a whole step. Same thing, no difference. Now we're going to look at the notes on the guitar. These notes that we're showing here on the guitar are not actually the placement of the notes. I just put them here so you can see very clearly starting from the first fret, right? It changes varying by the string. So if you're completely unfamiliar with the notes on the guitar, then the open strings are E on the sixth string, the fifth string is A, the fourth string is D, third string is G, second string is B, and the first string is an E. And so the sixth string and first string are the same. That's playing them open when it's tuned in regular tuning. So this is to show you how the notes work. Now, there's a whole step between A and B. The notes on the guitar only go from A to A to G, and then G sharp, and it starts at A again. We'll get into that in a minute. But just so you know, they just have A to G and doesn't go past that, is a whole step apart. This is always the case and always the sequence of the notes, no matter which note you start from, okay? There's a whole step between A and B. Between B and C, there is a half a step, see? Only one fret. Between C and D, there's a whole step. Between D and E, there's a whole step. Between E and F, there's a half step. And between F and G, there's a whole step, and G back to A, the beginning, there's a whole step. So you can remember it easily. Between B and C and E and F, there is nothing. There are just one half step apart. Now, what about the spaces in between? A and B, C and D, D and E, F and G. So let's look at that now. And this is what it looks like. This sign right here looks like a number sign, means sharp. That's what we call it, a sharp. And this flat sign, this is a flat. This small b, we call a flat, okay? So all it means, exactly what it is a sharp is plus a half a step, a flat is minus one half step. So plus, we would go from here to here. If it was a sharp, from here to here. If it was a flat, from here to here. That's all it means, okay? Plus or minus one half step. Now, we have A, if we say in sharps, A sharp, half a step. A sharp to B, half step, and continually B to C, half step. There's no such thing as a B sharp, and there's no such thing as a C flat. They don't exist. I don't know the rationale for any of this. Somebody decided this, and that's how it works. So C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, nothing between F and E. There is no E sharp, no F flat. That doesn't exist. F sharp, G, G sharp, A. Comes back to here, okay? Now, an A sharp and a B flat, the reason they're written here under each other is because they are the same thing. I know it doesn't make sense. I understand if that's what you're thinking. Why do they have two for the same thing? Because you can say A sharp and it means the fret after A, and it also means the fret behind B. So it can also be a B flat. You can say A sharp or B flat, it doesn't matter at all. There may be like deeper music theory where that does matter. I know on music sheets of music, sometimes they put how many flats in the beginning of the music to designate which key it is. That's for in piano. I know they do that. So if you're reading music, maybe that is more important. But my understanding, if you want to just keep it simple, A sharp is B flat, C sharp is D flat, D sharp is E flat, F sharp is G flat, and G sharp is A flat. It doesn't matter which one you use, they're exactly the same thing. These are all half steps. Remember, there's nothing between E and F and B and C. That's all you need to remember. So a whole step from here, from A sharp, would be, again, two frets, right? So it's going to be C. Right? So this is why it's important to memorize this sequence so that you know, because it's not always going to be like A sharp goes to something else that's a sharp. It goes to C actually would be a whole step, right? A half a step would be to B. So a half step from A sharp is B, a whole step from A sharp is C. So from B, a half step is C, and from B, a whole step is C sharp. But from C sharp, a whole step is D sharp. Okay, a half step is D. From D, a whole step is E. From D, a whole half step is D sharp. A half step back would be D flat or C sharp, however you want to say. A whole step back would be C. Now, that's all I want to cover in this first one to really keep it as simple as possible. That's just the note sequence. We're going to use this same drawing in the next two parts so that you can clearly see what I'm talking about. That's it for part one. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll answer you as best as clearly as I can. I'll make another video if necessary, okay? So let me know if you have any questions about that. If you want to know more about the music theory, if you find it interesting. Just one thing to keep in mind about theory, the basic stuff's very important. I find it very helpful to use, but you don't want to go crazy. Like, in other words, never let theory stop you from doing something spontaneous that you have the idea of, because even though theory is wonderful and very helpful, I find it extremely helpful to know it. Don't become a slave of theory. In other words, don't try to stick to the theory no matter what and say like, oh, these chords don't go together, this scale doesn't go over this chord, blah blah blah. All that stuff doesn't matter because there's a lot of cases where people play things together or play scales over chords that it shouldn't go technically, theoretically, but it does sound good and it's something unique and new. So just use theory as a to help you be more creative and inventive rather than it holding you back from being creative. Okay, that's all. So I'll see you in the next video for part two, where we're going to go over how chords are made. Until then, take care, guys.